Hi, and welcome to IKEA. How can I help?
Oh, my schedule is crazy. I just want some me time.
Maybe it's time to embrace the joy of staying in. With comfortable beds, pillow and decor, mood lighting, and so much more, you can turn your bedroom into the place to be.
Oh, sounds like a dream.
We've got you. Visit us in-store or at ikea-usa.com/sleep to create your dream bedroom today.
Hail cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
Great. Well, this is like a mini feeling I'm having of coming back from a summer break. International break has just kind of been the doldrums here. So I'm excited to get back to where we left off. Like this is a cliffhanger resolution. You triggered your wild card on last week's pod, and we need to know what changed, where your strategy's at, and also what's been going on with these national team matches. I mean, the whole country of Ireland has gone into hiding after Declan Rice and Jack Grealish did some dirty deeds to them. So commiserations to the Irish for sure. But how are you feeling, I guess? Vibe check, Josh.
Well, the vibes are good. I mean, I feel like I really kind of checked out for a few days. Now, last week when we did you should go back and listen to last week's pod if you haven't listened to it yet, because I think it's a sort of evergreen pod. We talked about sort of big picture takes on all 20 Premier League clubs, covered a lot there. And then I sort of revealed, I hadn't told you this before the pod, that I had activated my wild card. And so we went through that. Of course, I've changed a lot since then. I feel like it's still very much in flux. And I actually kind of screwed up because I made the classic wildcard problem of, you ever tinkered on a wildcard and you took a player out as part of a tinker, and then you confirmed, and then you realized that player had gone up 0.1 without realizing it?
Yeah,
this happened with me and
lost
Chris Wood.
Money. Okay, Chris Wood. So you lost whatever money you made on him. Were you ever going to... Has he increased in price since you did that?
He went up 0.1, and so he's back in the squad. I'll share the updated team with you. It did actually force a kind of. This is the problem: is 0.1 is so crucial when it comes to wildcard decisions, right? There's a kind of cascading effect here. So I think it's been a very. The Premier League, this first international break is a toughie, I feel like, right? Because there's a lot going on in the sports calendar. In fact, the Premier League sort of needs to compete in that world, right? You had the not Wimbledon, you had the US Open final, college football.
Some people would have
NFL.
watched the Woody Allen film Wimbledon, perhaps, with no Premier League on.
Yeah. Is that what it's called? Is it? No, it's like Match Point or something, right?
True.
There is a movie called Wimbledon with Kirsten Dunst and Paul Bettany.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. There's also Challengers, which I saw twice in the theater. That's how much I love Challengers. That's an amazing movie.
I watched it on my TV, and it was fine. I think a lot of rules were broken in that last point, but we could save that for another time.
We'll never know. We never saw what happened after the big leap at the end. All right. Well, so international break, I would say in general, when it comes to how I assess the international break, is I don't really pay too much attention to returns, right? I mean, maybe if there was like a super out of form player who starts to play really well, then that might change things a little bit.
Perhaps has scored a brace for Sweden. So
and it's like, should that matter? I don't really know, right? I mean, it's like it's nice, I guess.
We're looking for any clues. We're in like hyper. This is the beginning of the season. It's the beginning of the detective movie. Everyone's a suspect, and we've got to look under every rock here.
Absolutely, and turn every page, right? It's the old Robert Caro, Robert Gottlieb, whatever.
There you go. The author and editor. Yeah.
Speaking of good films, the documentary with them is pretty good. I think Trent had a man of the match performance. Was it yesterday for England? And let's see what else. Bruno scored today, but again, I just don't think these are super relevant. Bruno's been playing fine. I mean, he just hasn't been getting any like actual FPL returns, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, does it really matter what he does in the national stage? I don't really know. Kind of the same with Newcastle. Like I'm not, Isak scored in game week 3 too. So it's like, does it really change how I feel about him? Not exactly, right? I'm still kind of looking more like at fixtures, I would say, with Newcastle. I guess the biggest piece of news was João Pedro getting called up for Brazil, right? As an injury replacement. Brazil plays their final, I think it's just Wednesday. A friendly. Yeah, it's Wednesday, but I can't remember if there's like proper stakes for that match or not. I'm not actually sure that João Pedro would be expected to start that one anyway, but he's traveling for it.
Right. I've got the foot mob open, and there's no real indication that it is a match with stakes. We'll get back to you all on that one.
Yeah, this is something that I have like recently. I've sort of like become a World Cup, Europa League, like a cup person, where it's like if there's like a proper cup, I'm going to watch it. I'm all in. But just like random friendlies, that's a pretty high bar for me these days. Like it's got to be a really like. Are you watching lots of friendlies like even the England or like the American one? Until Poch is there, like what am I watching for? Like what am I?
It is just to interject, just so we're putting out the right information. It is a World Cup qualifier for common ball, and it's Tuesday evening that Brazil plays Paraguay.
Got it.
So we
had the day and the stakes completely wrong. So
but we fixed it. We fixed
That's
it.
True. We got there.
I did make a point of watching the U.S.-Canada match on Saturday, mostly just I hate watched because Jesse Marsch is just. What a fall from grace since he left Leeds. He's just been unable to find a home.
He took Canada to the semifinals of the Copa America.
It's as good as it's going to get for that guy. I can tell you. I can tell you this. But
we're just not aligned anymore. It's whether it's the movie Challengers or Jesse Marsch's career.
There are always interesting threads for sure. I mean, going back to the opening of Ireland hosting England. That's always just kind of a contentious rivalry, and then you've got the sort of the expats and Jack and Declan doing the business. There's always kind of something interesting, and I'll watch. I'm just like a sicko. I'll just watch any soccer match.
Right. No, and I respect that. I just there was something the Nations League stuff was like some kind of like sea change moment for me, where I was like, now they're going to try to turn like friendlies into like a cup, and I was like, I can't. This is like they have gone down a road I can't follow. Right. It's so you go down that road and you tell me what the view looks like, and I'll report back.
It's the same view. I'll tell you that it's the same view. Nothing's changed.
All right. So anyway, there was a Johnny Fleets asked if what is the tail number of João Pedro's return flight, and we'll be monitoring and live tweeting its progress. It's like one of those coaching searches, where like you're looking for private jets and things like that. To me, now that I know that match is on Tuesday, I would say I'm not especially concerned about João Pedro. It's not, if they played on Friday, maybe that would be one thing, but it's, they play on Saturday. I mean, it's not like he's going to rack up 180 minutes for Brazil. Right. And I think it's fine. I mean, he'll have a late Tuesday or early Wednesday flight. Right. I mean, and presumably he's done the Brazil to England flight many, many times in his life. Right. So I don't really know why that would be kind of devastating for him. Like I can see like if you're going to like Australia or something like that. Right. If you're crossing, I mean, they are crossing a hemisphere. I don't know. Like I guess I'm just not that worried about it. Are you worried about João Pedro?
I'm not worried about it, mostly because we have gone in on João Pedro mostly for the ripple effect across the rest of our fantasy team. He is the right price, and he's actually in good form. Most of us bought João Pedro for budgetary reasons, not because we really need him to bang against Ipswich Home. Ipswich Home is a terrific fixture, and I would prefer to get 90 minutes from João Pedro in that fixture.
Be an annoying one to miss out on.
Yeah,
sure.
Right. Yes, it would be annoying. Nonetheless, he has been kind of a long, a midterm, let's call him, buy. So if we only get 30 minutes out of him against Ipswich, so be it.
I think that's a good philosophy. I mean, ultimately, there's only so much control that we have over these things. So I think it's probably the right approach to take there. I think we will probably get some kind of update like this week, right? Either something from the press conference or something in terms of like training ground photos and things like that, right? Like if he doesn't even train with Brighton on Friday, sure, time to get worried, right? Yeah. But I think otherwise you're probably fine. And Eric asked if we overreact to international travel in Raston. Probably. I mean, I think there have been times, like a couple of years ago, when you had this, kind of after COVID, there was a lot of chaos when it came to like qualifying matches, right? Mm-hmm. And they were trying to squeeze like 3 fixtures into some of these international breaks, right? And so you had matches that would literally end Thursday evening, and then the club would have a match like a Saturday morning, or like the noon match on Saturday, and in those cases, it was appropriate to react to that because you often the player often either wouldn't start or even play, right? So I think that like there are times when it's a real thing, but I would say, anything that, the normal international window ends on a Tuesday, right? Like in the kind of like barring anything chaotic. So usually the players are back. They've got a couple days to adjust, and usually it's fine. And I kind of feel the same way about injuries, right? Like you're always going to get some of these like kind of minor Premier League injuries, like Cole Palmer right now is flagged. To me, those are almost never a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like if a player suddenly gets a minor injury, like a day before everyone's about to leave for international break, that usually just means they're trying to get them extra rest.
Yeah, they would want extra rest, and you're in a hard situation there where, you wouldn't want to decline an invitation to play for your country,
right?
But also publicly, you can't decline. So it's in everyone's best interest to make up some story that is defendable. So Cole Palmer injury, this is just how it's going to go. I haven't seen any that actually scream out to me like, oh dear, this is like a real warning flag.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you a question. And this will be the last international break question before we move on to FPL proper. What is the point of having Harry Kane start for England this weekend? Why was he starting? Like what? Like he's like a mid-30s forward. He is the most known commodity of all known commodities. I know they have a new manager, but it's like, isn't this a great time to give some new player like a run up front? Like I don't quite get that.
I think you underestimate the amount of power Harry Kane has in this situation.
You think he's pushing for a start there?
100%. He wants to keep the minutes, hang on to that talisman thing as long as he can.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. And I guess I'm looking at who else would have, it was kind of light on forwards now that I'm looking at the squad, right? Like the subs were like Eze, Bowen. Bowen was technically his sub. So maybe they were just a little short on forwards this time around.
And Ollie Watkins, I think, given how few minutes he's playing for Aston Villa right now, and he's not quite hit his stride. Yeah. I don't think he would have wanted to play those minutes necessarily. It's more important for him to get ready for the Champions League.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, I did get tricked by a fake Fabrizio Romano Twitter feed earlier today that indicated that Marcus Rashford was signing a deal to go to a Middle Eastern club.
The Photoshop was that convincing that you got tricked?
Yeah, it was like Fabrizio, like, it was, how it is. It's like sometimes you want these things to be true, right? Because it would be hilarious. And so it's like your immediate response is like, oh my God, I love it. And then the more rational part of your brain picks up and you're like, wait a second.
I feel
no
like
one else
is
reporting on this.
I wonder if it's like Cameo now with Fabrizio Romano. Like, could we just reach out to him and PayPal him like €200 and he could post whatever news we asked him to, much like you would do with Cameo?
That is a great thing. I mean, that is how he doesn't seem to have a job, right? Outside of tweeting. So like, I think he probably is available for hire, right? Like we could, 100%. Can you imagine if we just paid him to tweet about our podcast? I wonder if that's possible.
I'm sure it is.
All right. Next week, keep an eye for Fab Romano tweeting out our latest episode.
There we go. Always cheating.
Exactly. We won't reveal how much we had to fork over to make that happen. All right. So a couple other quick news and note updates. I thought this was kind of interesting. Cole Palmer is not in Chelsea's European Conference League squad, which I'm just a little surprised. I don't know that he was going to get any starts for them, but I suppose it's a very good thing from an FPL perspective if you're looking at
for sure. Yeah, that's like the level of certainty that every fantasy manager wants. And I suspect they can submit a different squad once they move into the next stage of the competition, right?
I believe that's how it works. Yeah, in January which presumably they will, right? I mean, they can field. Jadon Sancho's got to play somewhere, right? So I'm sure they'll get some.
Sure. Yeah. What a lad. Uh-huh.
It's crazy, right? I mean, you got Raheem Sterling at Arsenal, Jadon Sancho at Chelsea. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I will see if Chelsea can even get to the next phase of that competition. Who knows what version of Chelsea shows up week to week.
Yeah, absolutely. But I thought that was probably ultimately good news for Chelsea. They don't need him to get mixed up in that. And then he's flagged on the site right now, but I think it's a fairly. I did a little bit of searching around. I didn't see any real reporting on him having any kind of like serious issues, so he should be fine.
Ben Dinnery reports groin/hip/pelvic injury, so it's all kind of in that
wide range
bathing suit area for Mr. Palmer. Very worrisome.
Yeah. A couple other updates. Jared Branthwaite set to return to full training this week. Now, this at first glance, you're like, why is this even relevant at all? But there are a number of defenders that are shockingly cheap for Everton. And if they're able to eventually turn it around, a lot of people will be looking at some of these players on their wild cards. And even for myself, I'm sort of, I have Michael Linko in my team right now, and he's not like, I'm not planning to start him, but
he's 4.4.
He's 4.4 exactly. Yeah. You have Michael Keane at 4 million too, although now I'm scared to have him with Branthwaite set to return.
I think he must be immediately out once Branthwaite is back. Interesting. I like that. I mean, certainly, can it go on forever? What you saw from Everton toward the middle and definitely by the end of the season was a team that their table position was betrayed by the points deduction that the club had to take. Dyche had them, doing what he wanted,
playing well,
and playing well, decently enough, and specifically defensively. And a lot of that was to do with how well Branthwaite was playing. So, I agree. I think him coming back is an interesting fantasy wrinkle.
Yeah, and I don't really know how long it might. I mean, it's like he's just returning to training, but he's been out for months, so I don't know how long it'll take before he's back in the squad. But I feel like it sounds like Dyche is not. Like, I think he's got a ways to go before he actually gets sacked, right? I think he's going to be safe for a little while. So, and so I think, I don't know. I just kind of assume still, like, despite what we've seen so far, that he's going to figure out how to turn this thing around. Maybe I'm like the last person who still thinks that, but
I don't disagree with you at all. And I think Everton have bigger issues to solve than Dyche.
Yeah, exactly. Their issue is that they can't spend any money without getting more points deducted, and so they're kind of stuck with what they've got. Right. The one final news and note update. I like this little. Maybe I'll start doing news and notes at the top here, Brent. It's very handy, I think, to go through the news of the day. It's like I've got a little newspaper.
I feel like I'm watching Morning Joe right now.
Yeah, exactly. I remember James Richardson used to do this. AC Jimbo, like he'd do these like what's in the paper. Remember that?
It was like Italia 90.
Well, but also I feel like it was like maybe it was like for one of the World Cups or something. He had like a big stack of newspapers.
Right.
Videos that
back when he did the Guardian football podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Final piece of news is that European matches kick off this week. It has been very hard to follow what's going on because they like just announced the fixtures a few days ago. It must be like crazy booking these flights too, right? Now that everything's announced like a week in advance. And I guess they're mostly private jets, but you've still got to reserve a runway at the airport and stuff, right?
And the fans too. You want
the fans?
You want like a couple hundred away?
The fans are irrelevant, right? Like they no one cares about them at all.
Sure,
right?
The beer sales in the concourse is just a grain of sand compared to all the broadcast rights.
Exactly. They're like you'll just do whatever we tell you to do, and So but there are first things, there are no Europa or Conference League matches until late September, which I somehow didn't realize until earlier today that it's like a lean in on the Champions League itself until for the first couple of weeks. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have Champions League matches. And for all of my sort of like, this is so wacky, the way that they're doing it this year, it is fun to see all these matches. Like Villa play at Young Boys, my favorite. One of my favorite team names and one of my favorite stadium names, Brandon, because it's the Wankdorf Stadium, and so I love that Young Boys play at the Wankdorf. So that's where Aston Villa will be on Tuesday, and then Liverpool also will play on Tuesday in the Champions League. They travel to AC Milan, so another really interesting match. Wednesday, Man City, who always have a great every year now in the Champions League. They just have this amazing, easy run of it. They host Lille on Wednesday, so that'd be a great chance to play their squad players. And then I'm sure Holland will start that match, but and then Thursday, Arsenal go to Italy and they'll play Atalanta. And I think that it's kind of a dangerous match for Arsenal, possible banana peel type match for sure.
Yeah, and that's not it. I mean, we're going to be in a football coma by the time Gameweek 4 gets here because EFL Cup is also on Tuesday and Wednesday. Everton hosts Southampton.
Wow.
Brentford play Leyton Orient. Fulham away Preston. Palace away QPR. Manchester United host Barnsley. On Wednesday, Spurs are away Coventry.
Oh, my God.
Brighton host Wolves. Madness.
Good. Well, I'm glad I checked out for a few days just so I can check back in. Yeah. Because I front loaded my international break. I spent a lot of time on Sunday and Monday doing Wildcard related stuff, and I would sort of and then I tuned out for a few days. I had my fantasy NFL draft to do with there's an always cheating fantasy NFL league that our friend of the pod Dave started, and so I had to I basically did a crash course, 48 hours of drafting, and then as I was telling you, only to draft a guy who's out for the first 8 weeks of the season early on. So that was
like Arsenal's transfer
smart
policy.
Yeah, exactly. I brought in Kim Kallstrom, followed by who was the newest guy they brought? Was it Moreno or whoever?
Mikel Moreno.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So we're podcasting during the LA Rams Lions game. Matthew Stafford plays for the Rams, won a Super Bowl with him, former Lions quarterback.
Yep.
Will Matt Stafford refuse to celebrate a touchdown if he scores one at Lions Stadium? How does that work in the NFL? I
think no, it's not like that. It's a good question, but no, he'll celebrate. Maybe like the first time they played there, but it's been a couple of years now. I think they're over it. Like the Lions actually beat them in the playoffs last year.
He's free to dunk the football over the goalpost if he so chooses.
Absolutely. I think everyone should be allowed to celebrate. This idea that you can't celebrate with your, I think it was like the football ramble or something. They used to have a thing. There was a player who, I can't think of his name. He was an Irish forward, but he played for like a ton of different clubs. And that was like the joke is that he couldn't celebrate any of his goals because every club was a place he'd been at, before. All right. So that's your news and notes section, Brandon. Let's do a quick look at my wild card here, and I'll read off the team. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can do a quick look at the shared screen. But if you're listening to the pod, which is still the vast majority of people, we'll talk through all of my picks here. But so the question for me is basically. What do I want to? Okay, actually, two questions that are interrelated, right? And they are: what do I want to do in terms of having like really expensive midfielders, right? Like do I want to have 1, 2, probably not 3, right? It's probably impossible. Do I want to have Haaland and Salah, right? And so until you resolve that question, you almost can't put a team together, right? And so I had a team that I put together for last week's pod. I had Cole Palmer in it. I sort of talked myself out of Palmer again because I want a little more balance in the squad. He's just a little tricky at 10.6. But lo and behold, here I am again. And I brought in another expensive player. And I have Bukayo Saka, who has replaced Cole Palmer. He is 0.5 million cheaper. So there is a certain benefit there. But I'm going to read through I'm going to start with the midfield first. Sometimes people do these discussions, Brandon, and usually work back to front, but the problem is
the meat of the sandwich.
Yeah, you front load it with the worst part. It's like if you were, it's like if you were talking about an amazing sandwich, like you said, amazing sandwich, and you started, talking about the bread. I mean, sometimes the bread is the best part of the sandwich.
Sure, yeah, but no one's like, oh, so this was the style of toothpick that they used to hold the sandwich together. Nobody cares.
Yeah,
what was the sandwich? Okay, so I go through the midfield. I have a couple of questions after you're done there.
So right now I've got Saka, Semenyo, Eze, Salah, Rogers as my midfield 5. Yeah. Then up front I've got Haaland, Pedro, and Wood. Right. So who's missing from this? Who's missing is a second Liverpool player, a better forward up front, right? An Isak type player. I could turn Saka into Jota and use that money to turn Wood into Isak. That's one option. I could probably find the money to turn Saka into Palmer. Although, again, 10.1 to 10.6 doesn't seem like that much. It's quite a lot, right? It becomes very hard to, you basically go from having 4 or 5, like basically having 4 defenders that you can rotate to having 3, right? It's like you basically end up having to move into a cheaper defender. I did turn, let's see, Emile Smith-Rowe has turned into Morgan Rogers, another way for me to save 0.5 million. Trent has joined my team, Brandon, as well.
Welcome, Trent.
Yeah. However, I had Trent and I had Saliba a while back, and I thought, geez, like that feels like a lot of money for my defense. Like that it feels like a bit much, especially with a couple of really poor fixtures ahead for Arsenal, right?
You're not a really wealthy guy either. So
I'm not a wealthy guy. Yeah. Well, especially after some of these team value mistakes I've made the last couple of weeks. I think ultimately I've cost myself maybe like 0.2. So a bit dumb, but salvageable. And I have probably gotten a couple of price rises for my transfers as well. So it's, the question is basically, do I really feel like I need to have 2 incredibly expensive defenders? And I feel like maybe I can get away with it for now.
The key player here, the way I see it, Josh, is Bukayo Saka. And you indicated that you basically got quadruple premium if you include Trent in that camp, a triple premium attack between Salah, Haaland, and Saka. Yeah. Some people might wonder, is this the time to go without Saka with a plan to get him back in game week 6, perhaps, when there is a big fixture swing for a handful of teams?
Yeah.
Saka has Spurs away, followed by City away. Spurs, frankly, I think is a good enough match for Saka. I think that's that's sort of the inverse of City Arsenal, where you expect it to be 0-0. Spurs Arsenal, you expect it to be like 3-3 or thereabouts. So talk to me about your logic for Saka now versus Saka later.
Yeah, I think that's really the question is I really want to have Saka for that 6 through 8 swing. Yeah. And do I really want to put myself in a position where I have to, there's not going to be a way for me to do it with one transfer, right? So I'm almost immediately locking myself into a 2 transfer move to bring him back in. Now, I don't necessarily mind that, right? And maybe it does make sense to go Isak, Jota, right? And then turn Isak into well, that's a good question. Let me pull up the fixture, like a list of fixtures while we're talking here, Brandon.
Okay.
Because
who would be the under the radar strikers that might just be sort of like punt worthy for the short term? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So like, I mean, you could go. Well, I mean, if Ollie Watkins, I just think Watkins is a little tricky now with their first, European. I mean, it's not the hardest match, right? This Champions League match, but still, it gives me a little bit of pause. Like, is there another early sub coming in?
Yeah, it's like a dream run for Ollie to go from finish in the top 4 last season with Villa to go to the Euros, score a career-defining goal, to now you're in the Champions League. He's not going to want to miss that opportunity. Yeah. So he can, play 90 against Everton and Wolves. On the other hand, these are the 2 currently the two best home fixtures back to back for Villa, Everton, Wolves in the calendar.
Ipswich away in 6 as well, right? So it's a really nice trio of fixtures. Let's see. Newcastle have Wolves away, Fulham away, Man City at home. So 2 pretty good fixtures. I mean, better than Arsenal's fixtures over the next 2, right? And then they do have Man City at home, so it's kind of easy. And so there are times when you almost want to lock yourself in to transfers, right? Like it's like you almost want to force yourself to it's almost ideal to have a match like Man City at home in game week 6, right? Like I don't want to have Isak for that. I'm not going to be tempted,
like an auto pay bill online. It's like this money is coming out of my account on this date, and I don't have to touch it.
Because I am a believer that the fixtures really are key, right? Like it's like even the best players will struggle in difficult fixtures. Maybe like the absolute top peak, right? Like maybe when you're like with the Holland Salah types, there are some players who are so exceptional that like it doesn't really matter what the fixtures are, but those can be counted on one hand, right? Like, but I think in general, even the best players are going to do amazing, like fairly consistently sort of rounded out over the course of a year. They're going to do amazing in good fixtures, and they're going to struggle, at least comparatively, in tough fixtures, right? And so the question is, is Saka one of those players who's sort of fixture proof, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of just he's going to be able to deliver no matter who he's playing, and I think that's really the question for me. That's the question I kind of have to answer, right? And if I went Jota. So they have Forest and Bournemouth at home. Yeah, I actually think, again, it's such a work in progress for me right now, what I want to do with my squad, because when we potted last week, I actually think I like the version of my squad I had when we did the last pod more than I like this version.
Okay. Why?
I guess I feel like maybe I think that Cole Palmer is a little bit more fixture proof. I'm a little spooked by the flag. Right. And I just want to make sure there's nothing there. And so I don't necessarily want to have my bus team. I had a more kind of balanced squad that I was tinkering with earlier today too. And that was a squad. But I just think like it worries me to put together a squad, especially a wildcard squad, that doesn't have like elite high end talent. Right. It just feels like you're kind of, you want those players long term, right? And so you don't necessarily want to get yourself in a mode where, and everybody wants to do this on a wild card, right? You do a wild card and you want to look at game week 4 and be like, okay, whatever game week has ahead of you after a wild card, right? You want to be like, this is an awesome team. This team can't lose, even though we all know that like the first week after a wild card, like inevitably is a bust, right? But like you want that team that just like bang, like right out of the gate.
Yeah, but, get the top score of the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the question for me was really, which I think opens up, and I think it's fair for someone listening to ask, well, why did you wild card at all, Josh? And I think the question for me is, I really wanted Mo Salah, and and I wanted more Liverpool assets, and there was no way for me to get Mo Salah without burning points. And once I realized that by doing that, I was going to start rearranging my team, I just thought, I'm fine just doing this now, right? I'm fine just sort of making a bunch of changes right now. And
Salah just seems like such the obvious move for everybody who doesn't have him. Yeah. So, just to use the wild card chip instead of spending 4 points seems logical enough. Yeah. Given the banking of 5 transfers, if you can do it, it's like restructuring our team should, in theory, we haven't really seen it in practice just yet because it's too early, should be easier than recent seasons. So, wild carding for the reasons that you're explaining doesn't really seem bad or a poor strategy at all to me. I'm tempted myself, but I think we'll do it for content, Josh. I will do what
you'll wait a week.
I'll do the opposite.
Okay. Yeah. I think just in one final note on the wild card, because again, I know we went into it quite a lot last week, but there are a couple of players that I think are really easy picks for wild card. One of the reasons, if you don't have them, it's a lazier wild card, and I think Konsa and Anthony Robinson are both great wild card picks. I think Lewis Dunk is an excellent wild card pick as well. He's not in my current squad because I can't quite afford him at the moment, but I think that he is at 4.5 an excellent pick, and they have some really nice fixtures ahead as well. I just think he's it's in previous seasons you've been able to get him at this kind of discounted price, right? And I think a 4.5 million center back who's going to start every match, who has a little bit of goal threat, is a really useful kind of fourth defender to have in your squad, right? Yeah. And Semenyo is my like kind of, it's sort of like the for me pick. Like he still has not changed in price. I don't know why I'm the only one who is excited about this guy. Like I think he's absolutely fantastic. And then I've got Eze in my squad right now as well, who I think is kind of he's a buy low sort of pick, right? He's down to 6.9 million. He's done a lot of things well, and just he scored last week and got was it 3 bonus, right? So I mean he's off the mark already.
Yeah, and he's been unlucky to not have more returns than that has been widely discussed. I have one follow-up question on this wild card, because I think it's very interesting this season where there have been some disappointing higher priced forwards, namely Watkins, and Isak is kind of in that camp as well. It's either Holland and João Pedro, and your boy Chris Wood. Of course, we cannot forget about Chris Wood.
He's been great. Yeah.
So the reason I bring it up is most people wildcarding now will be wildcarding probably into a 3-5-2 formation. And it's interesting to me, like, to wildcard all of the best players, and somehow that just like funnels you to a 3-5-2. And have you thought at all about what what formation results from this wild card?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment it would be a kind of 3-5-2, 3-5-3 rotation, right? Like if I went with the wild card that you and I are discussing right now, which I am sort of like already like I'm leaking confidence in my wild card. I felt much more confident last week when you and I were talking, and now I think it's the Saka thing. I think honestly, this is why it's useful. There are times when I hate sharing my wild card team on our Discord or or on Twitter, because I don't really want I don't want to defend my picks, especially because there's a kind of style of responding to someone's team that I just find very grating, which is always like, it'll be like, you'll share their team and then it'll be like, no so-and-so ? That's the whole comment, right? And it's just, I find it so grating for some reason. And, but I think
you remind me of this New Yorker cartoon that I love. It's a father is putting his arm around his young son and he's kind of giving him some playground life advice. And he says, son, if you can't say anything nice, say something clever but devastating.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. That is always that type of comment. It's just like, wow, you knew exactly what to say about my wild card team to make me doubt everything.
Yeah, exactly. And really, it really can be a house of cards putting these squads together, right? When you move one, like if I take Saka out, right, that frees up 3 million that it's going to be very hard for me not to reinvest everywhere. And again, and the reason that I want Saka long term is because it's just it's very tricky to handle Arsenal assets correctly, I think, right now, because they have a really tough game week 4 and game week 5, right? North London Derby in 4, Man City away in game week 5. Then they have a spectacular run from game weeks 6 to 8. Let's see if I can take a quick look at it here. It's Leicester at home, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, right? Amazing run. But then in game weeks 9 and 10, they have Liverpool and Newcastle away in game week 10. So tough fixtures. And then you factor in a bunch of European Champions League matches for them as well. And it suddenly does not seem hugely appealing to have Arsenal assets. Now, once that's over, once they've sort of gone through the kind of gauntlet of really tough fixtures, their run from game week 11 on is amazing. And I think that if you have not wildcarded yet, I think, and you're sort of going to try to get by with like one Arsenal asset, or one or two. I do think wild carding to sort of get your ideal Arsenal 3, between game weeks 10 to 11 does make a lot of sense. I think that would be, one route that's out there.
I think that's honestly where I'm leaning right now. Knock wood, so nothing devastating happens to my squad, but I want to probably move Saka to Salah for free once the game week 4 deadline passes, and then try to work out through free transfers that fixture shift in game week 6 and then wild card around that time. So that's the road I'm walking.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So, so that's my squad. More to come. We'll talk more on the Patreon pod on Thursday as we get more information about some of these players. And speaking of Patreon, Brandon, what a great tie-in there.
So good.
Patreon.com/alwayscheating is where you can go to support the podcast and say thank you to the cheaters. We do bonus podcasts each week during the season, and so we'll be doing a new one on Thursday this week, of course. And Discord is alive and active. There's lots of different channels. I was getting tagged in the NFL channel today, Brandon. So there's it's not just FPL. There's all kinds of other stuff going on there. It's a fun group. So go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the podcast. And Brandon, you want to do one last shout out here for?
Oh yeah. Big ups to Fantasy Football Hub, who have been effectively underwriting our season preview and opening episodes. And for listening to Always Cheating, you get a gift, 50% off a Fantasy Football Hub membership of your choice. Yes, that 50% off link is still live. Just go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/always. Things we love about that site is just you can easily get your existing team rated by AI. Great way, as you're often saying, Josh, just to get some general ideas of which ways you can go with your transfers game week to game week. Also, the Hub guarantee. Win your mini league or get your money back. And there's also real live experts on that site with their team reveals week to week. Some of the best players in the game, Ben Crellin's transfer planning spreadsheet, and so much more. Check out the offerings at fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/always. Go to that site to get that 50% off discount. And like we shouted out last week, our friends at Blue Wire Pod, they have a survey that you can take. Link in the show notes, bluewirepods.com/survey. They're giving away a couple of $500 gift cards if you take part. So again, details in the show notes. Click the link there.
Excellent. Yeah. And one last shout out for the new Always Cheating Substack as well. We got lots of new followers after we shouted out last week. So those are post game week thoughts, Brandon, the Monday, sometimes Tuesday. I'm trying to do them after all of the matches have been completed for the week. So, but quick thoughts on the matches. So you can go to, I think it's alwayscheating.substack.com to get that. So Brandon, let's get into game week 4 though. We have what I like to call a FPL classic.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I love a classic Premier League weekend, Brandon, where you just have matches on Saturday. This is a true classic in a way, Brandon, because you have 8 matches on Saturday, followed by 2 on Sunday. Just 2 matches on Sunday.
Is it beyond a classic now because there is a late kickoff on Saturday?
Oh, super classic.
Yeah,
I like
it's
it.
Sort of like class. It's like a rum and Coke, basically, what we've got going on this weekend.
I like the late match, by the way. It's a fun one because in America, this means you really could do nothing all day but watch the Premier League, right?
Don't mind if I do.
Don't mind if I do. Yeah, exactly. In theory, with the 12:30 start in England, you could get up and do something. Take your kids to I don't know, basketball practice, and it's like the NFL here on Sundays, right? You can do a bunch. Go to church, Brandon. I know you love to get in a couple church sessions in the mornings if you can. Just bang them out, whenever possible.
Get my reps in.
Get your reps in. But now, 7:30, 10 a.m., 12:30, and what window am I going to skip? I guess maybe Villa Everton. Although even that, has some pretty big fantasy
You've got
implications.
to back your boy Morgan Rogers. I've got a sneaking suspicion he's going to make the cut going into Gameweek 4.
You know what it is? Unfortunately, it's the Southampton. It's the early match on Saturday. Southampton hosting Man United. I think that's the one that I will sadly be.
Just nobody's going to have players in that match.
I know. I mean, some will still have. I think like the statistically inclined may still have. Bruno, right? Yeah. He's still doing quite well in the stat tables and stuff. But and it is it's a great match for, in theory. And he did score today. I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
The content gods cannot help themselves with Manchester United. I predict a 2-1 Southampton victory here.
It does feel like it might be Southampton's first win of the season. I'm kind of inclined to agree. It feels like the momentum to get Ten Hag out of there.
It's all here. Building. There's United star players coming back from international break. What's going on?
Yep.
Do they even receive any coaching wisdom from Ten Hag at this point? I don't know.
I don't know either. I really don't know what's I don't know what he's doing anymore. I don't know why he's there. I guess it's like all the ownership stuff has to get resolved. The Detroit Pistons went through this a few years ago when their owner died, and there was like this big ownership takeover, and it was like nothing happened for like 5 years because it was just like everything that was happening with the ownership just sort of took precedence, right? Yeah. And there's no real kind of stewardship of things. So, I think the big question, we have a couple of questions about the game week, and I think the big one is from Idleberry, and he says, Captain Haaland or Salah? They both have good fixtures. Do we go with the Norwegian Legion or the Egyptian Magician? Are those real nicknames?
Egyptian Magician. See. The real Liverpool diehards would probably not relinquish the Magician from Coutinho, who bore that moniker for some time.
That's right.
But listen, we're not here to be pedantic. We actually hate that stuff. I know it's cheating. So if you want to call him the Magician, go with it.
Go with it. Yeah, you didn't want to do another religious reference there, did you? You wanted to say go with God. Yeah. I think, okay, I guess the question is there I almost stuttered up with my words there, Brandon. Is there a statistical thing that you could are there statistical things that you would look at to make this decision, or does it really come down to feel, right? You've got Man City hosting Brentford. You have Liverpool hosting Forest. Yeah. Brentford and Forest are both, sorry, just to finish the kind of setup here.
Go for it.
Brentford and Forest are both quality mid-table clubs, well coached, have a little bit of talent. Defenses are fine, right? Not great, but not terrible. Again, you could look at data points, but we're 3 weeks into the season. I'm not sure that there are hugely telling points of data at this point to tell you whether one squad is, whether one defense is considerably worse than the other, right? Or whether it's reliable enough information. So, so what do you think? I
think it's less statistical and more personnel based for me. And that takes me more to Haaland, because I think Forest have been able to play. I'm just thinking of the fullbacks, honestly, the wide play. Forest have been able to play with, I think there's still betting in some new signings, but I like their wide defense a bit more, and it feels more stable. And Brentford, it's still makeshift with the injury to Rico Henry and the entire back line. And, we just don't rate Flecken super highly. The personnel that City are going up against defensively augurs for a Haaland captaincy in my mind.
Yeah. I in general, I'm going to default to Haaland in basically any scenario, because I just feel like he is, I do think that Man City are the best team in the Premier League. Maybe Arsenal will be. Maybe Arsenal will be someday, but how about Arsenal actually beat them in the Premier League one year before we called them the best team, right? Like they just dropped points at home to Brighton. Like, I don't know why, let's there's no Arsenal are in a better position as the underdog anyway, right? They don't need anyone calling them the best team at this point. So I think that Man City are the best team, and they have designed. I feel like I say this every podcast, but it really is important to punch home all of the time, which is that the best team in the Premier League has designed an attack to create chances for this giant of a man, this kind of unusually tall, unusually fast, unusually accurate forward, right? Who kind of has everything that you want. And they have a pretty easy relatively easy Champions League match at midweek as well. There's just no reason, in my opinion, to and I guess the argument for Salah, if I were to make one, would be, I mean, certainly you can make one, is that there is, it's more likely that he's going to get assists, right? So there's more like, it could be that the absolute top high end return for Mo Salah is somewhere in the 20s, whereas maybe for Haaland it's more like 2 or 3 goals, right? And so maybe it's closer to like maybe his upper range is 13 to 17 points, and Haaland's upper range is 12 to 23. Whatever, like somewhere it's like a little higher. But I think that
it's so strange to me that is strange the right word. Haaland has scored 7 goals through three match weeks.
Yeah,
Salah has scored 3. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists. Yeah, Haaland has to score hat tricks to keep up with Salah's rate of general XGI. Or not XGI, but just GI.
His GI tracked is what I'm following. I'm following them more closely than the flights, Brandon. I want to make sure that he's doing well, eating well.
Absolutely.
I send yogurt.
He's going to need
him.
an ostomy bag if he keeps producing at this rate.
Yeah, there's a couple of great yogurt companies here in the United States, Brandon. And so I've been sending him Fage and what's the other one? There's another one that's
Chobani.
Chobani. Oh, he's getting a lot of Chobani too. And then I'm from Iceland. I'm sending over the Siggies as well. So he's got I don't think it's Gylfi Sigurdsson's company. I hope there's no connection there. There's a lot of people with very similar names in Iceland, right?
Sure,
and so
So what is more sustainable? The way Salah is getting these goals and assists, or Haaland getting hat tricks every match week? Now
they're both exactly as sustainable.
Yes,
it's like
right. Yeah, and it's not that Haaland is getting hat tricks. He has scored in every match this Premier League season. So I would just think of it. I would boil it down to more essential parts, and that Haaland and Salah are both returning every game week, and that doesn't have to be a little more complex than that. I think the point for Salah is that he apparently has more routes to fantasy points because he does, as you were saying, have assists in his quiver, and that's good. So long term, Salah looks like he might be winning out by game week 38 over Haaland.
Yeah, I do think that there's. I think that there are going to be weeks when there's a better case for Salah, right? I think game week 5, I think, is an example of that, right? In game week 5, you're going to have Man City and Arsenal play each other, and despite the slander that I just directed towards Arsenal a minute ago, I think that that's going to be a extremely difficult match in game week 5, even with Man City at home. And that same week, Liverpool hosts Bournemouth. So that week, it's an easy decision, right? Right. I think it's because I rate Forest and Brentford to a certain degree. I would say that I rate. Do I rate Forest defense? Their defense is okay. I don't know. I mean, do I rate either team's defense? Not really. I think that both teams. I think the real question is, I think both teams have enough attacking potential that they will maybe keep the other team. Like, they're not going to I don't think either team is going to play 7 defenders in the box or whatever. Or, you know what I mean? They're not going to just absolutely park the bus and try to. I don't know. Brentford in particular have shown an ability to go to tricky away matches and get returns, from them. And so I think that they could do something. And even Forest have a little bit of there's some real talent in that Forest squad too, right? And so I think that they could both teams could give the other one a run.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like, what's the game state going to be through much of these fixtures is maybe another way to think about it.
Yeah.
Game state City Brentford is City are going to be have like 100% possession.
Yeah.
And Brentford will occasionally counterattack.
Yep.
And I think Liverpool Forest, honestly, probably the same.
I think
deal.
Brentford have a good chance of scoring in that match.
Sure.
I would give them a pretty good shot at that. But all right, so I think it's really tricky. I think both of us are just realistically on Haaland, and that's just how it's going to be. I mean, if you had Salah, would you consider it more strongly? Do you think, or I feel like you'd still be on Haaland even if you had Salah.
It would be tempting. I think I would, just because that's assuming I'm me and I have captained Haaland the last 3 game weeks and I've captained 2 hat tricks. I feel good about that. If I had captained Salah the last couple of game weeks, I'm probably just like going with what's working for my team, if that makes sense.
All right, here's another question from Krim. Trent Krim, I think, Brandon, from The Independent. He says, is it crazy to double up on Jota and Luiz with a free transfer before transitioning to Salah on a wild card? This is one of those very specific team questions that I don't often put on the podcast, but I think it is. I think it does get to something that I think is interesting, which is, does a Jota and Luiz double up kind of equal one Mo Salah, or can it do in a pinch, right? It's not easy for everybody to get to Mo Salah, unfortunately, right?
Yeah. I guess the problem with this tactic is always, like we've seen with Jota versus Diaz, is one's going to score and the other's going to blank. So who are you giving up to have both of these guys? So,
yeah, I mean, I guess if you're giving up like one of these unreliable
Smith Rowe,
Bruno types or whatever, right? You're probably.
I'm fine with
probably
it.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds cool. I think the general gist of Liverpool is they're playing incredibly well. They have faith in this new manager. Everyone's in form, so everyone's a buy.
All right. Well, what about your squad going into game week 4? What are you see the plan right now is to hold your transfer. Can I see what your squad?
Yeah.
I want to see with my own eyes what what Brandon Kelly's squad looks like.
I'm gonna throw it up on the YouTube and I'll talk everybody through what we're looking at on the podcast here. So there you go. We're at the homepage.
That's great. That's great.
So I've got Dean Henderson in goal. Finally, Palace have a decent defensive fixture. Leicester at home. Yep. So looking forward to that Vardy hat trick.
Yep. Mm-hmm. He will score. Yeah.
Anthony Robinson, home, West Ham, easy. Saliba, Spurs away. Don't love it, but I'll start him anyway. It's sort of like, do you start Saliba or Pedro Porro? Do you start both? No, I'm not starting both. It's sort of a classic, just go with the better team. And I like Spurs to score, but I do think Arsenal are the better team and will have the better of it. So we just go with that logic. And then Konsa at home with another great fixture with Everton. Across the midfield, Anthony Gordon, away Wolves. I think Anthony Gordon finally scored an away goal a couple of game weeks ago. So now he's very playable.
I was wondering if that was like, if somebody was like, if you were in a position where you were planning to wild card in game week 5, then I actually think you'd be in a position where the question that we just had would have at least I think it would be a reasonable move, right? Going Gordon to Diaz in your case, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think that would be like that to me would be like plus EV. Like there's some expected value in that move for sure. I think I like it. Yeah.
Potentially. I think the way the non-wild card for me and the low quantity of Liverpool players, it works well for me if somehow Forest are able to mute Liverpool and Newcastle have an explosive match. Because I think people are getting away from Gordon and Isak. And if Gordon and Isak create points, then great. I have gotten to Salah basically by escaping damage there. And that's really what I'm hoping for. The big question I have with my squad is I've got João Pedro, Isak, and Haaland across the front. I have benched Morgan Rogers. Who do I drop to bring Morgan Rogers in? Smith Rowe, if I look at my team, Smith Rowe feels like the one least likely has the lowest ceiling, perhaps, than all of these guys. João Pedro, we have discussed his travel coming back from South America. How many minutes can we expect from him? Then there's Morgan Rogers, who hasn't even produced any fantasy points. So how does he get into this starting 11 just based on eye test alone? So right now I've got Rogers on the bench as well as Pedro Porro and Wout Faes. So I don't know. What do you think of this squad?
Bench makes sense. It's actually an interesting one, Saliba versus Porro as a debate. I mean, I think I would start Saliba over Porro as well.
Right, but Porro clearly has the attacking assets that Saliba does not. So you just go with the attacking defender.
Yeah, but I think I would still go with Saliba because I think that Arsenal have a better chance of keeping a clean sheet in that match, and I do think that there's a pretty good chance that the Spurs score, but I don't see them scoring multiple goals. Right, so then it's like you've got to kind of drop a scenario where they score one goal and that goal has a poor return attached to it, right? And it feels very likely that Arsenal are going to score a couple in this match, right? So it's sort of, anyway, I think you've got that one right. I think I would probably start Smith Rowe over Rogers as well. And I guess I'm sort of with you, even though I was debating Smith Rowe and Rogers on my own wild card and I went with Rogers. That's mostly because of the price, right? It's a 0.5 million savings there. And, I just think that they're close enough. And I guess the hope is that he eventually starts returning, but yeah, we haven't seen it yet. And they have the Champions League. Is there any chance that Rogers starts to get some rest ahead of some of these Champions League matches? I don't know. Right. Because I don't think that Emery is just going to, not try in the Premier League because he's so focused on the Champions League. I don't think that's what anybody wants or expects, right? So I think it's pretty close. I think, and I also think when stuff like this is close enough, it's like you probably don't need to sweat it too much, right? Because it's just like it's really hard to say who's better between the two of them. This is where I know you're not like you don't do this, but they have these sports books in Canada, Brandon. You can pull one up and see who's got the better to score assist prop, right? And those are all algorithmically driven, right? So it's like take a look and see what Vegas thinks or whatever, right? And maybe that's how you make your decision.
Sure, yeah. I'm not about that at all, for sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's a tricky week for benching, and we'll be accumulating presser knowledge as we get closer to the weekend. Do we get anything from the managers on players coming back, et cetera? But this is where I'm at. I don't know how I ended up with this vice captaincy on João Pedro. That was before his Brazil call up, I guess.
I guess you got to go Jota there, right?
Yeah. All right. We'll make a live vice captain's pick here on the pod, and we'll save our team right there. Beautiful. Always set your bus team, everybody. You never know when a disaster could strike.
To quickly go back to the question about the double up if you're wildcarding next week, I actually think that I would probably lean towards Eze if I wanted a 1 week punt on a player. If I basically was planning to wildcard in 5 no matter what. I think that I think he scored the goal. He got in for England, which I think is probably a confidence booster for him. And they play Leicester at home. I think that he's been taking so many shots. It just feels like he's kind of right for like a really big match. I just got double-digit returns in Gameweek 3, so it's.
I like that. Yeah. My general preference is to diversify and not double up. So I'm with you on that one too.
All right. Well, let's wrap things up here. A little early this week, but this is the second pod of the international break. We're sort of we need news, Brandon. We need new news. So let's say if you could only pick, let's say you're busy this week, Brandon. Maybe you're traveling, but your kids have I don't know, rugby practice this weekend, Brandon. You gotta go to a rugger tournament. All right. It's going to take up your whole weekend. You can record one game and watch it Saturday evening, on your iPad in your hotel room. What's the one match that you're going to watch this weekend? What's the most fun match? Not necessarily the FPL match, but the most fun match.
Do think it could be Fulham West Ham. There's something about how this West Ham team is taking shape where they're just like a real wild card. It's just like an unexpected team, a weird team.
Yeah.
And Fulham have, they feel like they've had a good transfer window, but I don't think they have really sort of coalesced and are as unified a team as we saw with Fulham last season. So I think this could be a real shootout at the Cottage.
Yeah, and I think that this Fulham team is kind of fun. They're really in transition right now, and it's sort of interesting. I think that they're fun to watch too. I guess if I were to pick one match to watch this week, it would probably be the Liverpool Forest match. I think. Well, of course. Well, obviously we have the North London Derby on Sunday. I guess I was sort of looking at the Saturday fixtures, but that's like almost too easy, right? Obviously, yeah. If you're going to watch the North London Derby,
I think that North London Derby is going to be great too.
Absolutely, I think that'll be great too. But just looking at the Saturday fixtures again, it's like I went so far with my metaphor that I really was envisioning I had an image in my head of this 47-year-old mother of three, Brandon, who's listening to the podcast right now, and this is her one chance to break away, right? And she's got the Bluetooth headphones plugged into the iPad. Wow. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Kids are in the other bed, raising a ruckus, and she's going to get away for watching Metro minute. So, but I'm really curious. I want to see if Liverpool can keep this thing going, right? Yeah. I want to see if it's fascinating to me with the new manager and whether they can keep it up and whether Salah can keep delivering. And it's a fun version of the squad. It's more fun, honestly, than I was expecting the post-Klopp era to be. I thought there'd be more of an adjustment. Yeah. Now, of course, it may not last, but at the moment, I think it's really fun. And I do think this Forest team has shown some spark too.
Grit even.
Yeah, some grit. And it seems like I don't even think they're really quite good enough to necessarily like challenge for a European Conference League spot or anything like that. But I think that they're the kind of squad that have enough talent. Like I think, Morgan Gibbs-White in particular, I think is really good and fun to watch. And so they sort of, it's like, it's not your classic good team versus bad team kind of match. I think that Forest could give them some trouble. So and then of course Sunday we have the North London Derby. I find those matches very hard to predict in general, right? I think a lot of results are on the table. I guess if I were to go with like a really boring pick, it'd be something like 2-1 Arsenal. But
I'll go 3-2 Arsenal.
3-2 Arsenal. Yeah, somewhere in that range. Both teams scoring. I could see either team winning, but I think Arsenal probably have a little more they're a little more organized right now, like a little more kind of stable up front. Mm-hmm. It feels like they are more likely to score 2 goals in the match. So yeah, that's your pod for this week. We'll be back on Thursday with our Patreon pod. We'll be talking through wildcards. Maybe Brandon will have been convinced to drop Anthony, Taylor, like not Anthony. No, what's his name?
Anthony Taylor.
Anthony Taylor.
Gordon.
Yeah, exactly. Anthony Gordon. Thank you. Anthony Gordon, like a bad habit. We'll see. And we'll see what else is going on. So we'll probably have some breaking news and some massive injuries to discuss as well. That always kind of seems to be the way. Yeah. So thanks to all for listening. Brendan, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Thanks, as always, to our producers. And if you want to get involved on our Patreon, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating, where you could say thanks for what we do. We get more FPL content in return, including the extra free pod each week. Producers, Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson. Oh, my.
You get emotional when you talk about our friend Trevor.
I love these producers so much. Yep. Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, Dave Wagner, Lloyd All, our buddy Chris Howell, Andy Penn, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Bobas Kuhn, Rom Frost, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, Terrence O'Donnell, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Easy Does It, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Craig Jackson, Caleb Robbie, Brian Clark, Thomas Tislov, Fro Jacobson, The Saint, Gareth H., Shalin F. Kadakia, Rishi Nigam, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Matthew Skinner, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Rin Sandberg, the 3 Jims. My God, man, really... You
just love our patrons so much. It's sweet to hear,
The 3 Jims, James Murray Wood, James C., and James Holland. And of course, last but never least, it's Jack. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on social media, wherever you get that. And visit our website, alwayscheating.com, for all this and more.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. And if you want to talk on Discord, if you're wildcarding yourself, there's a wildcard thread active there right now. So once again, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the pod. We'll be back in a couple days with the new Patreon pod. Have a great week. Go Lions. Goodbye.
Hey y'all, Darius Rucker here. A lot of people ask me, what inspires your music? And one of the big things is a strong sense of place. That's why I love my home state of South Carolina and want to share the awesome things it has to offer. From the beautiful mountains down to the sunny coast, it's got it all. Not to mention two of my personal favorites, great golf and amazing food. Come see why I love this place. Visit discoversouthcarolina.com.